Okay, I want to talk a little bit about crybaby pedals. Um, they've been around for a long time. In fact, when I was a kid, I went to a music store to buy one, and this must have been the early '80s. And I remember the guy in the store, who was a lot like that comic book guy in the Simpsons episodes, telling me, "Man, why would you want a piece of crap like that? They don't make them anymore." Anyway, ever since then, I've been sort of into them, and these are three Italian-made Jennings or Jen crybabies and one Dunlop. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Obviously, the old vintage ones have the phase-L inductor, which everyone seems to love, and they have the magic potentiometer that people go bananas about. Three different ears. This one has orange drops, this one has later caps, and this earliest one has what looks like a cousin of the tropical fish capacitors for it. But forget about those guys for the moment. I actually want to talk about the Dunlop one for a second or two. Okay, so it looks like we have some gigs coming up with our band that I may need a crybaby for. So rather than mess around with one of my old ones, I figured I could take advantage of the fact that you can buy these Dunlops just about anywhere really, really cheap. This one was $50 used at my local Long and McQuaid. And it has the benefit of having a pedal board friendly power supply. So I figured this would make a good basis for hot rodding, since I'm not destroying anything vintage. Plus I have the vintage ones to compare to, and we could go from there and see what we could come up with. So I bought this for $50. I have not even changed the inductor to the better phase-L style inductor, although I have that on order. And at this point I haven't even got to the point where I've changed the input to true bypass. That's all standard stuff most people do, and ultimately I'm going to do that with this pedal. But in the process of working with this pedal, in the process of working with this pedal, I stumbled across a couple of things that blew my mind, and I want to share those things with you guys. Okay, the cool thing about the crybaby is that there's a whole pile of mods out on the internet for you to look at, and you can look at them and come up with your own. Basically, after I bought my Dunlop pedal for $50, I tried every single mod that was out on the internet and came up with the following. Now, keep in mind with the Dunlop crybaby, there's actually a buffer, which is an extra transistor here that's at unity gain that I guess impedance matches it better to modern stuff. Also on the Dunlop there's obviously that power supply stuff, which would be off here, but for our purposes this basic schematic will work. The Dunlop, first things first, the Dunlop, instead of having a 470 bias resistor for the first transistor or the second transistor, had 390, which gives a little more gain. I left that. That was good stuff. Two important resistors in the crybaby are the 33K, which is called the Q resistor by most people, and the 1.5K, which basically this is a feedback loop coming back from the second transistor. So in the original Clyde McCoy's, this 33K was 100K, so I changed that to 100K. Second thing I did was, this is 1.5K, and people suggest values as high as 2.7K. I actually went to 4.7K based on the idea that this is a feedback loop providing negative feedback, and between this guy and this guy, this transistor will have a lot more gain if it's getting less negative feedback. And people seem to appreciate the higher value, so I went with 4.7K and was happy with what I got. The other thing I did, noticing that people were really happy with the boomerang wah and wanting a little extra gain out of the second transistor, The gain, again, the bias is set here by a 10K resistor, which puts it at almost unity gain. I figured I needed a little more boost, so I went with 8.2K. So 1, 2, 3, 4 changes. And then the final thing I did, and this was the critical thing, there's a power supply resistor, 22K, that feeds the first transistor. And what happens there is the 9 volts come across here and it sets the voltage here, but in addition to that it acts as a divider, so the signal coming out of here, most of it is going back through that 22K resistor to the power supply. So I actually changed that to 100K, and that was a significant change. And what that did was it gave my transistor more gain, it gave it more grit, and it gave it more of a growl. The final change is suggested by Jeffrey Tees, who makes the Tees wah. And interesting, there's an error on this schematic. These caps that drive the pot are 0.22 on all crybabies. I went with 1 microfarad, so I replaced the one that drives the pot from the transistor with 1 microfarad, which is his suggestion to do, rather than go out and get the old e-car vintage pot. And that was fantastic. That really changed the sweep to what I was after. I spent a lot of time messing around with this 0.01 feedback cap that they use to make a bass wah, or in some cases they mess with that for different values of wah. What I found was that 0.01, the original stock cap, was the best choice. So all in all, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 changes based on various original crybaby specs. The bottom line was to change the taper and to get more gain out of the transistors so that the crybaby would drive the amplifier harder. So I did all this, and I was quite surprised with the result, which I will show you by playing the damn thing. That's the old crybaby. So this is the modded one.